This is Newsbits on Fusion TV. Here are the headlines. United Nations Security Council condemns deadly fighting in Mali. Former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak sentenced to 3 years in jail. Malawians protest election results. China and Russia reach a 30-year $400 billion gas deal. Military coup in Thailand. Public urged to remain calm. These stories and more when we return. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute. Hello and thanks for joining me on this edition of Newsbits. I'm Nike Roberts. Former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak was sentenced Wednesday to 3 years in jail for the embezzlement of public funds used to renovate his family estate. His two sons, Ayla and Gamal, were each sentenced to 4 years for the same crime. Mubarak was toppled in 2011 after a 30-year autocratic rule. The sentencing will leave many Egyptians happy. Mubarak and his sons were also fined $3 million and ordered to repay the $17.6 million they are accused of stealing. Mubarak, aged 86, has been under house arrest and has 2 pending corruption court cases and a retrial for the 2011 killings of protesters. Likewise, an Egyptian court sentenced 155 Muslim Brotherhood supporters to jail on Wednesday for charges including the instigation of violence. 55 of them were given life sentences. The remaining defendants received sentences between 3 and 10 years. The Cuban dissident blogger Yoni Sanchez made history as the owner of the first independently owned newspaper. The online newspaper went live on Wednesday. The media, like most things in the communist country, is monopolized by the government. This paper will provide news about Cuba daily, but will not be a platform against the government. The paper 124Y Media will not be in print, but solely online. Sanchez was one of the dissidents allowed to leave Cuba in 2013 after Castro eased opposition restrictions last year. About an hour after the website was launched, it was hacked, redirecting to sites criticizing the blogger and written by well-known writers in favor of the government. Access to the site from outside was, however, not interrupted. Nigeria has asked that the United Nations Security Council add Boko Haram to its list of terrorist organizations. If the organization gets listed, it will allow countries to impose travel bans, arms embargo, and asset freeze. The United Nations will decide Thursday if this is the right decision. The United States branded Boko Haram a terrorist organization last year. Militants have killed over 20 people on Wednesday, and at least 120 have died in 2 bomb blasts on Tuesday. These attacks are the latest in a long line of attacks by the terrorist group Boko Haram, including the abduction of almost 300 girls from a boarding school last month. There is still an ongoing search for the missing girls, with the help of international allies, including the United States. The U.S. has deployed 80 troops to Chad to assist with the search of the missing Nigerian girls. President Obama, in a letter to congressional leaders, said the personnel will support the operation of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft for missions over northern Nigeria and the surrounding area. The troops will remain in Chad until assistance is no longer needed. The U.S. already has troops assisting in Nigeria. After over a decade of negotiations, China and Russia reached a 30-year agreement worth $400 billion on Wednesday that will allow Siberia to send gas to China by pipeline. The deal was expedited by the attendance of both Presidents Xi Jinping of China and President Vladimir Putin of Russia in Shanghai. The deal, set to be effective from 2018, requires Russia to supply 38 billion cubic meters of natural gas to China every year. Each country will be responsible for building the pipeline within its own borders. Russia will invest $55 billion in infrastructure to facilitate the deal. This will strengthen the diplomatic relationship between both countries. Voting has concluded in Malawi amidst riots and claims of irregularities. Voters were enraged by the late opening of polls, with some polling stations opening up to 10 hours late, thereby pushing the voting into the next day in some cases. 12 candidates were vying for the presidential seat, with 4 front-runners, including the late president's brother, Peter Mutharika, former cleric Lazarus Chakwera, as well as Muluzi, the son of President Baliki Muluzi. There have been claims of hacking into the Malawi Electoral Commission's counting system, and officials have had to resort to manual counting after the electronic counting system crashed. In a statement about the elections, incumbent Joyce Banda called for an immediate manual audit of the results and noted irregularities, including multiple voting by some individuals and discarded and tampered ballots, among others. She, however, appealed to Malawians to continue with their commitment to peaceful coexistence and to remain calm until the MEC determines the outcome of the elections. This is the 5th poll since one-party rule ended in 1994 and the first time Malawi held presidential, parliamentary and local elections on the same day. The United Nations Security Council has strongly condemned recent violence in northern Mali between government forces and separatists. More than 30 people were killed in clashes after troops were sent in to respond to Tuareg rebels who attacked government offices in Kidal last week. The rebels on Monday released over 32 civil servants they had taken hostage during the attack. The Security Council Tuesday demanded an immediate and unconditional withdrawal of armed groups that still control some government buildings, further saying that those responsible should be held accountable, and called for a credible and inclusive negotiation process to help bring long-term peace and stability. Mali has been in chaos since last year when Tuareg separatists stirred a coup in the capital, Bamako. The chaos led to a brief Islamist militant takeover in the north and prompted French and African troops to intervene. Thailand's military chief, General Prayuth Chan-o-cha, announced a military takeover of the government Thursday, saying that the coup was necessary to restore stability and order after months of turmoil and political unrest. Prayuth, in a statement on national television, said that the commission, which imposed martial law on Tuesday, will now take over the administration of the country. The coup is the 12th since the country's absolute monarchy ended in 1932. General Prayuth appealed to the public not to panic and to carry on with their normal lives, pledging protection of foreigners in Thailand. A gathering of Nigerians in diaspora recently held a planning meeting for a proposed trauma and diagnostic center to be situated in Abuja, Nigeria, the capital city. Here are remarks by some of the participants.
The essence of coming together to talk about this project is to drive it forward, as we have pledged to do. As a member of the Medical and Allied Health Committee, actually I'm the chair of that committee, one of the things that we decided to do at the previous meeting was to identify a group of like-minded people so that we could identify the key issues that would impede the progress of this committee. We work very closely with the technical committee and also with the fundraising committee to be able to interface and obtain input from all the key members so that we can come to a meaningful conclusion in driving this forward. The idea has been started by a diaspora organization, and it's really in conjunction with the consulates, the Atlanta consulate, and also the New York and the Washington ambassadors' input. And these are the main sponsors of this project. And using the technical know-how of the diaspora, we've been able to at least coalesce a group of people to be able to come together and sit down and formulate a strategy to be able to go forward in the right direction. Right now we're planning on meeting with the staff at Grady Hospital Atlanta, which is a level 1 trauma center, to be able to see if we can use the model that they have and implement it in Nigeria. Yeah, indeed, like you, I believe that there is no health care if it's not accessible to the general population, especially in Nigeria, where a low percentage of our gross domestic product is used on healthcare compared to other countries with our income. So I agree with you. Part of the mandate of this project, even though it's not for profit, is that a certain amount is going to be set aside for the underprivileged or for the Nigerians in the community that do not have access to medical care. So that's definitely a standard that we're going to implement. But I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to gain the momentum to be able to raise funds as much as we need. For this it's a mammoth project, but it's doable, and getting people to buy in. This is the only organization I know that has been able to really get diasporas from different organizations, and there are many diaspora organizations that you know about. And taking AMPA, for instance, the Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas, we also have brother organizations in England like MANSAG, and also in Canada, that can get chapters involved and that can get physicians. So the manpower is there. The fundraising is possible because I believe that when you have a quality outfit, people will come. And that's one thing that we have to really try and implement. Once you get standards in place and you're treating people to worldwide standards, just like India and South Africa, then people will buy in. And I'm sure we'll be able to attract the support that we need for this project.
The project is very key. In fact, that it's going to be one of the first in the region, that is West Africa. We need a trauma center, but you cannot get a trauma center without a diagnosis center with MRI, with mammography, all other things, EKG. You see, all kind of things that you need to put in place. So we're going to put it in phase form, whereby you start with the diagnosis center, but we need a place that we'll be able to expand into. We don't want a place choked up, because we're going to have telepad, we're going to have runway for air ambulances. We're going to do it at a truly level 1 center that's comparable anywhere in the world. If you have an auto crash, right, after treating you, you'll be able to walk immediately, but the doctor has to pass you to the next phase so you can then get yourself ready and then be. My son had a crash, right? All the peg bones were broken in an auto accident, but now he's playing basketball because he went through all the processes to make sure that the healing was complete, to make sure all the nerves were in place, and that's what we need. And there are a lot of people who lose Nigeria that we ought not to lose them. Well, whether we like it or not, we're going to have it, because the population of Nigeria is Nigeria is a powerhouse of Africa in terms of economic growth, in terms of population, in terms of effective demand, in terms of GDP. And by the end of this century, Nigeria will be about 1 billion people.
This center really is to add to the capacity of healthcare in Nigeria. Many of us who grew up in Nigeria have come to realize that there is inadequate capacity for those who are still in Nigeria. Healthcare is simply inadequately available. And so the purpose of this center is to really boost the access to healthcare, basic trauma, basic diagnostic care that people don't have ordinarily. So our goal is to ultimately reach people who don't have easy access to healthcare in Nigeria. Well, it was a difficult decision, but we felt that Abuja is a central location, not just geographically, but also psychologically and politically speaking. It provides us a nice platform to go beyond just healthcare, but really to push, the idea of making a difference in the lives of people. And so Abuja was the reason, we felt it made sense to really go to a place that was central. In terms of the fundraising, we are going to start right away. The project itself is a multi-year project, perhaps anywhere from 4 to 5 years. But we hope that once we start our fundraising, the process then will go from there. But the goal is to get it done as quickly as possible.
The project was conceptualized by NIDO and NIDO Atlanta specifically, and the consulate. We formed a platform and we worked with them, and we found it necessary to bring all Nigerians together beyond NIDO, indeed, and for all Nigerians in the diaspora, whether in the America, Africa, everywhere, so that Nigerians can contribute to and manage and take care of it and sustain it. Medical excellence as a reference point both in Nigeria and indeed Africa, so that anywhere, when you talk of diagnosis in Africa, it will be the first center you will think of. It's ambitious, but I believe it's bankable and it's doable.
Well, that's all the news bits we have for you on this edition. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time. Until then, stay safe.